call the meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Here.
Bozak,
Here.
Crouch,
Here.
Scarberry,
Here.
Mayor Lansford.
Here. Is there any changes to the agenda?
No, sir.
Thank you. Then we'll move to public comment. Anyone who would like to address the council, please step forward and state your name. Okay, if no one wishes to talk to us tonight, then we'll move to new business. Item 1.
Mayor and Council, items 1 and 2 are really the same, but two different parts of the same item. We've been working for several months on a property assessed clean energy program, which is a financing instrument that enables developers to pay for a portion of their development projects, up to 25% of the total project cost, for those portions of the project that are deemed by the law to be energy efficient. That could be alternative energy, it could be energy efficient windows or siding or doors and HVAC systems and controllers and so forth. And we've had at least 2 developers, including North Point, the hotel project, that have indicated that they want to use this financing method and that it could be critical to their overall development financing. The state law lays out a fairly detailed process for doing this, and you've been going through these steps over the last several months, and most recently in December when you adopted the actual implementation plan for the PACE. Once that's done, the next step is to conduct a public hearing, and Cheryl has advised that we can both conduct the public hearing and adopt the final enacting ordinance at the same time. So those are the 2 items, 1 and 2 on your agenda.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to open the public hearing on a proposed property assessed clean energy PACE plan.
So moved.
Your second.
Second.
Any discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye.
If there's anybody in the audience who might want to be speaking about this, I know that you'll want to call on them in just a minute, but let me just explain briefly that the PACE program allows a voluntary add-on to the taxes. So this isn't something that's involuntary. It's not something that's like the tax increment financing that is applied throughout the entire district. The property owner essentially says, okay, I'm already paying X in property taxes. I'm going to agree to add Y onto that amount. It'll be collected by the county, remitted to the city, and who then verifies that the expenditures on clean energy development components are met, and then that money can go, usually not to the developer himself. It's more likely it's going to go to the people that are handling financing of the project, and so that's how it works. So you see property assessed and it involves taxes. Obviously, people are keen to make sure that it isn't something that they have to pay involuntarily like a tax.
Thank you. Anyone from the audience like to make comment to this? If not, then I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing on PACE.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 2.
Item 2 is the ordinance adopting the program. I believe, based on the limited intelligence I have on this topic, that we're probably among the first 8 or 10 local government jurisdictions, cities and counties can both do this, to adopt the PACE program in the state of Illinois. Because of that, we're also going to be one of the first ones, talking to our respective counties about what they have to do to add this to the taxes. So that'll be a discussion we have to have after you've adopted this ordinance, and it'll be new to them. So there'll be some administrative issues we have to work out.
I'll entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance authorizing a property assessed clean energy PACE plan for the city of Streator.
So moved,
For a second. Any other discussion?
Scott, has the county said anything towards?
Councilman, we have not gone to the county at this point and said, what do you think about it? Because we're not required to do so. But the reason that I mentioned that point is that we certainly don't want to catch them unawares. We're allowed to do this. It's provided for in state law, and they will have to do the amending the tax bills in accordance with the development agreement. It also has to be separately approved by the city council, just like you separately approve redevelopment agreements for TIF. But the exact mechanism, the exact logistics of how they'll do that is something that's going to have to get worked out.
Any other questions? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae.
Aye.
Bozak.
Aye.
Crouch.
Aye.
Scarberry.
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 3.
Mayor, item 3 is an item that is on the council per your request and your initiative, and also reflects, I think, Cheryl, a recent change in state law that allows the cities to consolidate the public forum section. So this makes some changes that you continue to have the same 3-minute rule that we have now for public forum, but it establishes that the aggregate of all who might speak can be 30 minutes unless you choose by majority vote of the city council to extend it. And it also adds some other language that I think clarifies how public forums are to be managed, not only by you, but also by the chairman of the other boards and commissions that you appoint in the city. So this is intended to apply the same to the planning commission and the park board and whatever other boards and commissions that you appoint. Anything else?
Anything you want to add,
I think-
Cheryl?
I think it's pretty straightforward, and unless the council has questions for me, you can call this order and mark it down.
It is my understanding this has been challenged, or has been through the courts, right? It's been,
The 30-minute time period has been, I believe, through the Public Access Council. I'm not sure if there's a court decision.
okay. I'll entertain a motion to adopt an ordinance amending the city council public forum comment rules.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae.
Aye.
Bozak.
Aye.
Crouch.
Aye.
Scarberry.
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 4.
Mayor and Council, in 2012, you approved a pre-annexation agreement with the Norfolk Southern Railroad regarding the property that we commonly call the Prairie Transport Site out in the southeast part of the city near the corner of the rail line and the Smith-Douglas Road. The agreement was somewhat nebulous about when it gets activated and wasn't clear either about the automatic language that is usually in a pre-annexation agreement. So, I mean, basically it said, when you become contiguous, we'll talk about it, which isn't how you should write a pre-annexation agreement. So, we've had several discussions with the Norfolk Southern Railroad on other matters, and with regard to land and possible development project involving them in Livingston County. And so as a part of those ongoing discussions, we asked them to just annex the property rather than redo the pre-annexation agreement to tighten up the language. Now that we are physically contiguous, which we weren't in 2012 with the Prairie Transport Site, just annex it. And the legal description wasn't all that clear either in 2012. And so we cleaned all that up, and so they've agreed. They've carried through on their end of the bargain, I think, pretty well. And so that's why this is before you. However, I have to humbly request that you table the item, unless you have any questions about it, until the February meeting, because I failed to notify the Fire Protection District and the Township Road, which we have to do in advance. Those are the only districts that we have to notify in advance where it's applicable, where we have a voluntary petition, and this is a voluntary petition. So we have already started that process, but it hasn't been completed in accordance with the timelines in the statute. So unless you have any questions, we can discuss it to make sure that you're okay with what we're planning to do here. But once that's complete, it would be my request that you hold this item over to the February regular meeting.
Any questions?
Yeah, is there any more roadway that we would get than we already have? No.
No, the Smith Douglas Road adjacent to this site is already in because the right-of-way property on the west side of Smith Douglas is in, and that brought that right-of-way in. And and Livingston Road, east of Illinois Street, already came in with all of the Vector property and the property to the east of Vector, the IDI Industrial Park and the property to the east of that, where all those storage buildings are. That all came in when you created the Streator South Industrial TIF.
All that would be necessary is fire and police protection.
There probably is not a township road that adjoins this that's affected, but the fire protection district is affected.
So this was a timing issue, basically, right?
The notice and time.
Notice in time.
Well,
Yeah.
we didn't get the notice out. It was our oversight.
So I need a motion then to,
Please send the table.
what?
To put up, to table it till next month.
Okay.
I'll make a motion, we table it till the next meeting in February.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Edi,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. What is the acreage of the property that we're going to be annexing?
It's 3 separate parcels.
And yeah, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of around 2 acres, I believe.
Okay, total.
Yeah.
Item 5,
As you know, we've made some changes to the group medical plan that covers our full-time employees. And in the process of doing that, the broker mentioned, don't you guys have a 125 plan? It refers to a section of the IRS code that permits the cost that employees pay for their, not for the city portion, but for the portion of the premium that the employees pay, to be taken out of their checks prior to the application of the federal and state taxes. So it's called pre-tax, and the effect of taking that number out before you calculate the tax means that the employees pay less tax. Who can argue with this? Years ago, the city had a 125 plan. We had it when I was here the first time, but for some reason, and probably as a result of various changes that may have been made in the group employee plan, it was not in place when we made this change. So the city doesn't say much, but the employees could I gave an illustration in the transmittal memo. So putting this in a 125 plan enables the employees to have that kind of savings at no detriment to the city. So it's recommended that we adopt that.
I'd entertain a motion to approve the resolution for a Section 125 plan for pre-tax payments made for medical-related employee benefits.
So moved.
Your second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Now, this is not a carryover, right? So if they opt to take out a certain amount to set aside, and if they don't use it, they lose it?
No, this is not an HSA. What you're referring to is an
Okay.
health savings account, and employees may elect to put even more money that they only can use for certain things. This is not that at all. This, I mean, this is the premium they got to pay anyway.
Okay,
It just reduces the amount of federal and state tax they have to pay because it comes off.
comes off the top.
It comes off the top before the calculation of what's owed to Uncle Sam and Uncle JD.
Okay. Clerk, call the roll, please.
Edi,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 6,
So after several years of hiatus, the state is offering the tourism attraction program grants again, and the START committee has requested that the city council authorize the submittal of a grant. One of the grant requirements is that we have to pass a resolution committing to pay our portion of it. So I'd like Jeremy to explain a little bit about what kinds of improvements the START committee is recommending, and so that you can decide whether or not you want to do that, and then we can talk about how we would finance it.
So yes, at the last month's start meeting, we discussed it. The project they're proposing is to install 15 wayfinding signs throughout the city. This goes back to when the START team originally issued the recommendations to the city council a handful of years ago. Was to install wayfinding signage on the north entrance, the south entrance, east and west of the city to guide visitors and residents to the ball fields, the hospital, the Center for Health, our hotels, our downtown, all the attractions here in town. So it would install 15 of those signs, as well as another recommendation of the START team was 2 informational kiosks in the downtown, one at the corner of Bloomington and Main, and the other at Wasson and Main, basically to mark the ends of the formal downtown. And those kiosks would have information relating to events. They could end up having information for sponsorship or anything, but city events and locations, so visitors to the downtown can find their way to what they're looking to find. So that's the recommendation of the START team, or the request is that we put in the grant to install those 15 signs as well as the 2 kiosks. The preliminary estimate is $60,000. The grant has a threshold of 50, so the project had to be 50,000 or above. So it'll be $60,000 by my estimate to complete the work. It's a 50-50 grant. So the majority of the funding can come from TIF. 2 kiosks, as well as the majority of the signs are in TIF districts now. There will be the potential that a couple of the signs won't be, but the majority of the funding can come from the city's TIFs.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion approving and supporting the submittal of a TAP grant and committing local funding for the grant. A motion.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, I have some. So are we saying it was a 50,000 minimum? Or is our portion the match 30,000? Or is it
Correct.
$30,000?
Total project, you have to submit a project of at least 50. We're submitting one.
I don't have a problem with the signage at all, but the kiosks, are recommending 2 kiosks, one at Main and Washington, or Wasson, and Main and Bloomington. And I just don't think we have the foot traffic yet to have 2 kiosks downtown. There's so many, I don't know, newer ways. I think kiosks, to me, are an old way of getting tourists to where they want to go. And there are new apps that you can have on phones that'll tell you everything you need to know, which I don't know, but I know it can be done electronically.
In fact, I think that, I know that a physical or hard kiosk is what's recommended, but I gotta tell you, I'm with Ed on this one, and not only because the technology is changing and people expect to be able to find all that information on this, but also because I think and Jeremy, correct me if I'm wrong about this, the overall intention of the grant is to attract people to the town, not just to help them find their way, right?
It's geared towards bringing people to town, but it can be used to guide them.
I'm not suggesting that the wayfinding isn't eligible,
No.
but a key element of the legislative intent is to also bring people to town. And if it's an app or if it's something that can guide you, then it's available when you're still out of town. And so it seems to me like something that's electronic or virtual might actually, as Jeremy and I write up the grant, because we've been working on that even today, that if it's more virtual, then it might actually fit that intent of the grant a little bit better.
What's the cost of the kiosk?
The kiosks were $15,000 apiece.
15,000.
$15,000?
They were $15,000, and that did include a electronic display to have some of the QR codes and things that could be virtual and add to
That
that.
I agree with, but wouldn't a better place be maybe at the south end of the city park, or?
Well, we already have one in City Park, frankly. I mean,
Well,
it's up to you to decide. I mean, frankly, I don't think you need a physical kiosk at all. But it's up to you to decide how you want to lay things out downtown.
Now, START members, they are okay if you wanted to do 1 kiosk and change it to make it more of an electronic
or virtual type tool versus 2 of the standalones.
Is there any talk about what would be on the actual kiosk itself? I mean, virtual stuff or, you know, the apps and things, but are they gonna have, I heard at one time advertising flashing up and down through the thing.
I don't think it was, at least for my meetings with the start, it wasn't to be flashing, it was that you'd have to go to the kiosk and then maybe you could bring up a map potentially and look at, you know, if you're downtown for a destination, it'll show you where the local coffee shops are, where the park is in relation to where you are. And the you know, adding in an element where you could hit it with a QR code on your phone and it would bring up the maps and guide you to wherever you want to go. That's a good element that can be incorporated. But advertising was a component of us before the grant came into it. When they talked about this last year, it was a way to raise funds potentially to sponsor the kiosk in a way and to provide those elements
Well, it's gonna be
and help
paid
offset
for,
the
they
cost.
don't need it sponsored if we pay for it.
No.
So, there's no cost to them at all. And it's, you know, I'd be the last one to say, I don't want to put out anything that's, some committee has worked hard to come up with a plan, and I don't want to discourage them, but I'd also like to see, like on all the murals now, it's got so much attention, every day we have people looking at those. Some app that we could put on the murals that could be part of the grant, or
Yeah, but
figure out.
we already have that plan though. I mean,
But
if
you
you
gotta
just
hire
put a
somebody to
QR
do it.
code, no, we can do it ourselves.
You can do it
We just need
yourself.
some signs printed.
So putting QR codes on the murals is already part of the Wall Dogs
Yeah.
work plan?
And we've had that discussion.
Okay, that's good.
That's good.
So the signage is 15,000?
The signs, there were 15 and there was, yes, there was a total of 15 of them. A little over $1,000 a piece.
So if you're matching
No,
30,000
What do we do?
and taking how much out of the TIF, would probably be 80%?
yeah.
No.
The balance would have to come from the general fund either in this year and or a portion of 2020, because by the time you get the grant, it'll probably lapse over in 2020.
Wouldn't it be cheaper just to pay for the signs out of the TIF?
Well, and we can, except for if the signs aren't going to be placed in the TIF, then you can't. Most of the signs, as Jeremy has said, will be in one of our TIFs.
Right.
But there's, I think there's a few locations where the sign will physically be out of the TIF district, so we can't use TIF money in that case.
So if there was 2 signs, you're only talking $2,000.
I don't know the exact amount, but a small percentage of it wouldn't be eligible for TIF, that's right.
Do we know what the kiosk is gonna look like?
I-
It looks great, but then the screen is so big on here, it would cost you.
I do have some artwork, I do have some
$70,000.
artwork in the estimate that came in, I have it from Design and Signs, it wasn't ready for the packet, but I do have it, so I can provide that if you guys would like
I'd
it.
like to see that, and get the price of the electronic boards, would be 2, I suppose.
That was included, I mean, so yeah, to making them electronic was included in the quote from Design and Signs.
Can the app, the cost of that be included in the grant application?
I believe so, yes.
And take out one of the kiosks and use that money instead for the app, is that what you're
Yeah.
saying?
I'd still like to know what it's gonna look like. You know, we could go forward with it, and then if we don't like that, we can have them change.
What's the time frame?
It's a pretty short time
Submission
frame.
for
The application has to go in by the 1st of February. What I would say is like with any other grant, if the city is lucky enough to receive the grant, the council does have to accept it. You know, if there were some doubts, it's never nice to give grant money back, but it could,
Well,
you could say that.
I don't think that would ever happen, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, if it's your desire to, just in general, to say, you know, one physical kiosk and the others, see what you can do within the same budget limits to have virtual things, then we can work with that. Jeremy and I will work out the specifics. The state just released this and only gave 45 days for this or something.
Is everybody okay with that approach? Yeah. Okay,
I have one other thing.
okay.
In the actual wayfinding signs, we have, there's a little design that we have to change in here that wasn't part of the first ones that they came up with, I know. No,
So that it conforms,
that's minor.
so that it conforms to the other city signage. So
Yeah.
that it conforms to the other city signage.
Yeah, well, yeah, I'll talk to you. It's a minor thing.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other questions?
So the motion is the same, given, you're just giving staff direction within
Right.
the bounds of that motion.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 7,
Jeremy?
Thank you. Yes, as part of our sewer planning, we've set up this year that out of our city sewer funds, we will do the South Illinois Street storm sewer project. So that will install storm sewers that separate the sewer basin along South Illinois Street from Bridge Street or the tracks down to Lundy. It'll actually extend down to Coal Run Creek along the berm, staying out of the pavement we just put in last year. So that'll completely separate the area in and around South Illinois Street and the couple of blocks there. If you remember a few years ago, we fully designed the Coal Run Creek, or majority designed the Coal Run Creek Interceptor project. These pipes are sized to eventually handle additional flow if and when the city can let further jobs to connect to it. So we had 7 bidders. It was a competitive bid. Recommending tonight Universal Asphalt out of Peru for as the low responsible bidder. And if you approve the contract, we'll get going this spring.
And unless Jeremy really bloated his engineer's estimate, it's way below.
I see that, yeah.
And you'll recall that, was it last year or the year before, we resurfaced Illinois Street south of Lundy to 12th, and we didn't do the portion north of Lundy specifically because we needed to do this first.
Yes.
So, so the asphalting is or is not a part of this?
It's not part of this, but the asphalting is our MFT project for the year, so this project will likely take about 2 months, and immediately following that, we will follow through with the asphalt
So
portion.
then we'll have all of South
Now
Illinois
we're all
paved.
done. Okay. Thank you. Entertain a motion to award a construction contract to Universal Asphalt and Excavating, Inc., LaSalle, Illinois, for work on South Illinois Street Storm Sewer Project.
So moved, Jeremy.
For a second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 8,
Mayor and Council, item 8 has to do with the recently completed dog park at James Street. This item was not initiated by staff, it was initiated by the Hardscrabble Lions Club, who could have said, it's on city property, it's yours, but they didn't. They came to the city and said, we'd like to continue to help out with that project, and but there's certain things that we can do, and there's certain things that it really makes more sense for Public Works to do. So we put together this memorandum of understanding just to clarify going forward what things the Hardscrabble Lions Club is going to take care of and what things we're going to take care of out of the Public Works Department. I think if you look at the division of labor, it makes perfect sense as to the kinds of things that the Public Works would naturally do. I'm just really appreciative of the Hardscrabble Lions Club for even agreeing to do what they're doing, because they didn't have to do that, but they felt like that was what they wanted to be involved in with this project, so I recommend its approval.
thank you. Entertain a motion, place on file and approve the memorandum of understanding with the Streator Hardscrabble Lions Club for maintenance and repair of the James Street Dog Park. Have a
So moved.
motion, please. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion?
Just for Cheryl, the liability was always there on the city anyway, wasn't it?
Well,
It says, because we're assuming the liability, they will,
Well, they are in paragraph 4 of
yeah,
their
that's what I,
portion. They're holding the city harmless that might be caused directly or indirectly from their use of the city dog park.
And we're holding them harmless.
Right.
What actually happens when the attorney starts suing people is another matter, but
Hopefully, it'll never come to pass.
But that wording is
The
fine.
dogs will all be
yeah,
paid, the dogs and others.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 9,
still on the park theme, the park board, your park board, met earlier this month and has recommended some changes to the rolling 3-year plan for City Park. And so they also talked about some things that I think will come up at your February meeting with regard to the naming of the trailhead park out on West Broadway and the Greenway, but they're still working on those naming recommendations. But they did finish work on the 3-year plan for City Park, and it's recommended that it be approved.
Entertain a motion to place on file and approve the new 3-year city park plan and related park use policies.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other
The
discussion?
related park use policies also pertain to City Park. When, in November, you approved some changes to your city council policy statements on use of the park, we didn't have the final version of the Plum Pavilion use policy, so it's attached here. And so, if it's okay with you, let both be approved by your motion, unless you have any revisions to
Well,
either
there was
document.
one revision about carnivals and circuses in the city.
Well, that's right. Ed mentioned that there's apparently some carryover language that we didn't take out. As you have evolved the policy changes and the use of the park, the last time you revisited this, you wanted struck out some language that had been in the code for years. It says that you can have heavy equipment in there, and
And
we've
we
taken most
revised
of
all the
that out.
rest, but this one's.
Because you said no heavy equipment except on the paved surfaces in City Park. Somehow this one, survived
Yeah.
all these iterations. So my request is that your motion cover both the 3-year plan and the pavilion policy with the one amendment, taking that language out of the pavilion policy. If that's acceptable to the person who made the motion and seconded.
Sure.
Or Crouch or something.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Item 10, the consent agenda. Entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda with fund warrant totals of $634,851.80.
And there was a,
And there's
yeah, and that number reflects the amendment that Julie put in your box.
Yeah. A motion, please.
So moved.
Your second.
Second.
Any other discussion? Clerk, call the roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye. Terry, you have anything? Ed?
Just one short thing is, I was writing up some materials for, not grants, but for awards and, well, some other things that we were doing in the city. And it just struck me as wonderful, actually, the number of groups of volunteers we have in the city. There are dozens, and they all do their own thing. You never hear about them, but it's great. And I'd like to say thank you to all the volunteer groups. Many of these people that belong to them are in this room tonight. And thanks for all your work. That's all I have.
Brian? Joe?
Thank you everyone for coming, and let's hope that it's a great blizzard this weekend, that's it.
Yeah, we don't want that. Okay, I don't have anything. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussion of the appointment, employment, compensation, discipline, or dismissal of personnel and the sale, lease, or purchase of property.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Clerk, call roll, please.
Vidae,
Aye.
Bozak,
Aye.
Crouch,
Aye.
Scarberry,
Aye.
Mayor Lansford.
Aye.